The topic here, of course, is understanding the authoritarianism of Donald Trump, right? Very specific form of authoritarianism. So this is a psychopolitical analysis of Donald. Now, the reason why I started to work on Donald Trump specifically was because of the trauma he was inflicting not only on America, but of the world. And as a political philosopher, we were talking a lot about him, and it became very clear that he does not have a political philosophy. So to try to understand him through political philosophy was next to impossible, right? It just, those tools of political philosophy could help you understand him, but it wasn't the essence of the man. And so what we have to do is we have to figure out what kind of tools do we have? What kind of apparatus do we have to understand this person so we know precisely what he's going to do? And that is political psychology or political psychoanalytic theory. Erich Fromm, who Dr. Langman talked about, was very essential in understanding the psychological dynamics of Donald Trump. But a few things we have to do. First, we have to say that MAGA is not an ideology, right? And you know what an ideology is. It's a comprehensive ideals, values, principles that are all interconnected. It has a vision of the world. MAGA is not that, at least not Donald Trump's personal form of MAGA. It might be some of his followers have that, but he doesn't, right? What MAGA is a narrative. It's a convenient political narrative, right, that works. It's the empty signifier, as we talked about yesterday. And so Make America Great Again means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But what he emphasizes in this narrative is decline. It's the decline of America. America was great in the 1950s, right? We had power. Everybody respected us. But now, in the course of decades, everything has gone bad because of the liberals, because of the immigrants, right? Because of the socialists. And now, of course, it's because of the communists. That's the latest thing. You're going to hear a lot about communism all over America right now, even despite the fact that it's virtually non-existent, right? Right? But that's, you get Roosevelt liberals doing well in the political sphere, and now all of a sudden Roosevelt liberals are communists. So, but in contrast to the decline, there's the narrative of the Messiah. And Donald is the Messiah. Only he can fix it, right? So we have to trust this one person, put our faith in him, and he's going to turn this whole thing around. And he's going to make the world respect America again. You can imagine how insane that sounds right now, right? But that's what we're hearing from him day after day after day. So this narrative is what we call a palingenetic populist statement, right? Palingenesis is about a rebirth of something, which is the essence of fascism as well. Now, the populist paradox that I have here has something to do with the idea that populism takes advantage of real problems. There are some serious political, economic problems in America. They articulate those things in a way that people can understand, and then they take advantage of them for their own self-interest. However, the paradox is their power they can't maintain their power, they can't continue to exist in power if they fix the problems. Because if they fix the problems, they're not needed anymore. So they can never fix the problems. In fact, they can only make them worse and blame the others for making them worse, when in fact, oftentimes, it's they who are making it worse. So how do we understand Donald Trump? We understand him through political psychology, and that's what we want to do here. Now, in the process of the years we've been dealing with him, I wrote this book, The Dark Charisma of Donald Trump. It's massive. It doubles as a weapon or a doorstop. So that's my marketing pitch. So the Dark Charisma of Donald Trump, it looks at three different things, three different forms of his psychology on top of the charisma, which people see in him, that he has some kind of charisma. Remember, charisma is not a thing that exists in the world. It's a perception. It has something to do with this idea that these people have special gifts, oftentimes God-given gifts to do things that normal people can't do. So a lot of his followers see him as having those gifts. Now, that charisma is combined with these three psychological profiles. And the first one is malignant narcissism. Malignant narcissism is a term that came out of Erich Fromm. It's in the most extreme form of narcissism. This kind of narcissism takes pride in traits, not accomplishments, Healthy narcissism is we all may have healthy narcissism. We like to look back and see our accomplishments, remind ourselves that, yeah, we are on the right track. We are doing good things in the world. That's very healthy. This form of narcissism simply takes pride in being, in existing. If Donald Trump walked in this door, we would have to applaud him, not for anything he did, but just for blessing us with his presence. Just for existing, we would have to praise him. That's the kind of malignant narcissism where the whole world revolves around them. And literally, they see the whole world revolving around them. They are better than everyone else, and therefore the whole world must submit to their greatness, even if they do nothing. Just their presence is great. So every malignant narcissist has to have narcissistic mirrors, something around them that mirrors their greatness. For Donald Trump, of course, it's his daughter, right? Ivanka. Of course, she's the most extreme narcissistic mirror for him because he has incest tendencies are off the chart. And just go back and look at how he talks about his daughter and how not, normal things you would say about your daughter. My daughter is very beautiful. She's an amazing woman, something like that. No, he talks about how he would have sex with his daughter if she wasn't his daughter. Now, for a narcissist, the daughter is the extreme mirror. It's them outside of themselves, right? In an object outside of themselves. They recognize themselves in the daughter, in this case of Donald Trump, and therefore there's that sexual attraction to the daughter, right? That's a narcissistic mirror. But also in the projects, if you listen to how he talks, everything he does is the greatest. He only speaks in superlatives. It's the greatest. It's the best. The likeness of which we've never seen before. Why? Because it's him. It's connected to him. That's a malignant narcissist, right? So it's no news to say he's a narcissist, but he is the most extreme form of narcissist, right? The second part is Machiavellianism. Machiavellianism, of course, coming out of Niccolo Machiavelli in the book The Prince, which he wrote many books. That just happens to be his most famous one, but which emphasizes real politics instead of the ideal politics as you would get with Aristotle and Plato, right on up to Machiavelli, right? So this is the abandonment of the common good for the power of the prince. The common good is no longer an issue for these type of people who are Machiavellian. These people know how to manipulate. They are skilled manipulators, right? They manipulate everything and try to manipulate people around them, their own families, their colleagues. Everything is some kind of game to be played with people to get them to do the things you want them to do without them knowing that it's not in their interest, but it's in his interest, right? Now, of course, he manipulates the American working class with grievances. Look, the American working class should have a lot of grievances. They should, and they do. But he keys in on that, and then he uses it for his own benefit to get him to power, right? And then once he's in power, it's for him to make a lot of money. And in this case, this term, to stay out of prison, right? He can't get there alone. He has to manipulate those grievances. He's also very much a confidence man, the con man, right? You rely on me. Look, I'm a great businessman. I made myself very wealthy. I'm going to make you wealthy. I'm going to make the American working class wealthy again, as if the American working class was ever really wealthy, right? But that type of confidence, man, is amazing. Now, the export of that for working class people is this. It reminds me of a story. The first time I went to New York, when I was in high school, I went to sing at Carnegie Hall. And a guy came out on the street. He had a bag full of VHS tapes. Okay, some of us are old enough to remember VHS tapes, right? And they were all bootleg tapes. And he put them all out on the street and he said, $20. And they're all new movies that were just out in the theaters. $20. And I was there with my stepdad, and my stepdad said, oh man, I want to see this movie and I want to see that movie. So he bought 2 of these. And I said to him, look, there's nothing on these tapes. They're blank. No, they're good. But guaranteed. We get home back to Michigan. He puts them in the VCR, pushes play. What's on the tape? Nothing, right? Now you have the con man, and then you have someone who realized they were conned, and then they go against the con man. But what Trump is able to do in this type of manipulation is to get the people who are conned to watch the tape and think it's the best movie they've ever seen, despite the fact that there's no movie. That's the level of manipulation he has with the American working class, right? And much of the American working class. And of course, the ends justify the means. What are the ends? Wealth, staying out of prison, apotheosis, self-glorification, self-deification. And how do you get there? By manipulating people. The last of the three main psychological profiles is psychopathy, or sociopathy, which of course they're basically two different, they're the same thing, same outcome, but two different means of getting there. Psychopaths are generally born that way. Sociopaths are generally created. We tend to think he was born psychopathic, but he was raised in a sociopathic environment. So it doubled up, right, in this case with his father, Fred Trump. Now, what is psychopathy? It's a total lack of empathy or remorse. It just does not exist. He does not feel remorse for anything, and he feels empathy for no pain that he has caused to other people or that other people are happen to be feeling. None whatsoever. Now, as a good actor, as most psychopaths are, they know that socially they have to show that they care, right? They have to demonstrate that they feel what other people are feeling, but it's all cognitive. There is no feeling, there is no emotion for the pain and suffering that he causes. I was just talking to Syed about this. The man's bombing Iran. Again, nowadays, he bombs Iran. How many thousands of people has he killed? And he says, what do we think about Iran? He says, I'm bored with it. I'm bored. And moves on. You murdered thousands of people, and you're just bored with it and moved on because it means nothing. Zero to the psychopath, right? So, therefore, when you understand him as being a psychopath, you understand that he has no interest in the American working class that he says he represents. And if he has no interest in Americans, what do you think he feels about Turks, right? Or Africa, or anywhere in Asia, or Europeans? None whatsoever. He doesn't care about us whatsoever, so he definitely doesn't care about you. Now, this is interesting because one of the things that often comes up is whether Donald Trump is a fascist. And I always argue, no, he's not a fascist because he's incapable of being a fascist. And what do I mean by he's incapable of being a fascist? MAGA, the movement itself, has deep fascist tendencies, and in many cases there are fascists in the MAGA movement. But Donald Trump is incapable of being a fascist. Think about fascist leadership, right? They always have some kind of ideology. Number one, MAGA is not an ideology. Fascism is an ideology. Fascist leaders have an ideology. They have a vision for their society. They have a vision for the world, right? They have a mission. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for their people. Donald Trump is not willing to sacrifice himself for his people, for his vision, for his ideology. None of that. He's willing to sacrifice the world for himself. He's, in that case, an extreme bourgeois. Extreme, the most purest of bourgeois you can find, not a fascist, right? Himself, not necessarily the movement. The movement has plenty of fascists in it. Now, last thing I want to say here is that his form of authoritarianism is a highly personalized form of authoritarianism. For Trump, MAGA is only about Trump, nothing else. And MAGA folks are learning that now in the second term. In the first term, he still did things that made them think he was working for them. Now in the second term, he secured at least 4 years out of prison, because remember, he was looking at possible prison time in the interregnum between terms. But now he's back in. And what is he focusing all of his time on? Vanity projects, right? He tore down the east wing of the White House. He's building a ballroom. He's working on the National Mall. He wants to tear down all the cherry trees in Washington, D.C. and build a new golf course, right? He's got his new Qatar jet plane that he redesigned. He's taking the Dorian columns off the White House and putting Corinthian columns on. He put gold all over the Oval Office, right, with all this stuff. He's focusing in on himself. He's finally doing what he wants to do, which he didn't necessarily do in the first term because he had people around him who could limit what he did. Now he doesn't have people. He learned his lesson. He only has sycophants around him, which is allowing him to express his innermost being. His innermost being, his innermost concern is himself and only himself, right? And he's trying to make Washington, D.C. into a narcissistic mirror. It is going to mirror his greatness, right? So as I said here, the second time, or the first time he ran for president was a marketing ploy. It was supposed to help his businesses out and make him the most famous person in the world, as he said. But he unfortunately got elected. His wife was pissed that he got elected. Are you aware of that? She did not want him to be the president, Melania, but she was mad. She even refused to move to the White House for like 6 months, right? But he got elected. Second time when he got elected was to stay out of jail. Monetization, we just had a release that he made $2.2 billion since he's been back as president. 2.2. It is illegal for presidents to make money outside of their salary while they're president. 2.2 billion is how much he's made by generally people giving him meme coin through his businesses, right? And then, of course, the third is the deification via presidential legacy. He will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents in American history because he is going to force us to believe that. He's going to leave behind the legacy of that. Not because we're going to think of him that way, but because he's going to make it that way, right? Unbelievable. The future, of course, January 6, 2021, we saw what happened. Mark my word, right now, he is not going to leave. After his 4 years, he is not going to leave. He is going to try to do anything and everything he possibly can to stay in office. I said that the first time around. People didn't believe me, and then he tried to have a coup. He tried to overthrow the U.S. government so he could stay in power. Guarantee you, second time around, he's going to do the same thing, but it's going to be even worse than having this riot in the White House. So now, it would end democracy to stay in power? Yes, but that's his last refuge from prosecution. And he's more than willing to end the American Republic, end American democracy, so that he stays out of prison if he survives the second term. All right? All right, thank you.